This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everyone, very good morning. Uh, Today, the agenda would be we will get into the basics of Java and then the JVM. So, as mentioned in yesterday's session agendas, right? Before getting into the performance engineering concepts or various engineering sessions, I mean, we definitely wanted to um, have a basics of Java. We definitely wanted to think ourselves as a developer, so that we exactly know what we are doing it, right? Before we go and find problems, before we go and analyze the problem and find the root cause, we also should know about certain basics that is going to be part of a Java application, right? So that will make our job easy. Will not make things black box. It will be everything that you will aware of. Whatever you're going to see it in the your heap dump or your thread dumps or your profiling tools, right? Whatever terminologies, whatever problem statements that you're going to observe in those tools, you will be able to relate to how it is going to look like in a real program, right? When you're going to say a particular method is taking time, you know exactly what method is, how a method will be constructed. When you say a memory is getting not released from an object, when there's a memory leak, when we say a particular object is taking more memory, you know exactly what object means, how an object is created, right? Similarly, when you say a response time problem in one particular class, in one particular method, and probably a class calling another a class calling another method of a class. So all these things you will be able to look into as a black box, as a white box rather than a black box. That is an intention, right? We should know what we are doing, and we should definitely get a confidence of we know what a developer will do, right? We have to be there in the shoe of a developer, so that when we go and talk about these problem, you will be able to confidently say about all these problematic areas, the root cause, very much related to the language of a developer, which he used to talk. That is the whole intention of this session, to make ourselves as a performance engineer comfortable with this environment, so that when we move on to the other sessions, we know what we're talking about, right? So today what we will do is, I'll just give a quick agenda of what is it we are going to cover today. So we'll talk about why Java performance engineering, and basics about Java, and then we'll get onto the inside Java, what is JDK, what is JVM, what is JRE, how it is related, and while you're going to set up your Windows machine, right? I definitely wanted every one of you who is going to be part of this batch to set up your environment. Either it is going to be your Windows machine or probably laptop, right? We wanted to have this Java setup in your machine, and then so that is what we are going to cover, right? What is JDK? When you install Java from your Oracle website, what it is going to have? What is the difference between JDK, JVM, and JRE? What are the problems you will encounter if you are not going to set up your environment properly? And then we are going to get into very basics of Java program skeleton, right? We all know classes are there, objects are there, method are there. What exactly, right? Very basics about what is objects, what is class, what are the variables, okay? And then we'll also get into creating few programs, right? We'll probably walk through a couple of small programs, standalone programs, a class calling other class files, and will also probably will let you also to create the similar things in your own environment, right? That's what I want to do it. Maybe Saturday, Sunday, before we come to Monday next session, right? I would request the people who are going to join the batch to have this environment, to have this Java, to have this environmental variable set up properly, to have this sample projects, creating a few DB connections, few HTTP connections in your Java program. Again, it's all pretty much easy. That's what we are going to cover it through today. And then we are going to look into how to extract a jar file, how to extract a war file from a Java program, right? And how to deploy a Tomcat. And then we'll go on to the JVM architecture. So we have seen what is Java, how to write a Java program. When a Java program is getting executed, right? What exactly happens inside a JVM? What are the different components within JVM? How it is relevant for performance engineering? What are the main components like your memory or threads, your execution engine? So we are going to look into all the important components, how one JVM works. So whenever we are going to say my JVM crashes, or we don't talk about there are 2 JVMs, 3 JVMs in my application, we should exactly know what happens inside the JVM. So that is the intention. So we'll go through this JVM architecture, each and every component of that. Okay. And then again, all these things are pretty much related to our performance engineering. We are not going to get into the Java development space, right? That is going to be vast. For us, for a performance engineer, whatever related to our engineering work, that is the concept we are going to touch upon when you're going to talk about Java or JVM. So we'll go into every components of JVM very specifically on memory, threads. That is something we are going to deal with throughout our engineering sessions, right? So that is the objective. We will cover as much as possible today. I'll not rush it up because this is a very basics. So some things is pending. We'll definitely will take it over to the next session. Okay, so let's get started. This is the yeah. I just wanted to give the context so that you know exactly what is coming up for this 1 hour. Okay, so all through this this engineering sessions, right? We are going to deal with Java performance engineering, right? So is it really important? Is it really worth? Why Java? I mean, I think even yesterday there were a couple of questions about other programming language, right? Whatever I'm going to learn today, is it relevant for next 1 year, next 3 years, next 5 years, right? That is an important question that we should ask. Not only here, whatever we are going to learn, whichever tool, whichever technology, right? Is it going to be relevant for at least for next 2 to 3 years, right? Because I learned something today, I should use it, or rather the market should also have this demand for using this skill set. So when we look into today's market, right, we all know last couple of years with cloud and DevOps picking up, there are a lot of languages that are in limelight, right? Especially your JavaScript, your Python kind of a language, and Shift for iOS, and so there are going to be a lot of programming languages that is going to come in, go out. But if you look into Java for last whatever decade or more, right, it was always there. And even now today, when you look into any of the top products, say when you look into SAP Ibris, or when you look into the Kafka messaging system, when you look into Elasticsearch, which I told yesterday about a NoSQL database, right? The NoSQL database itself completely developed on top of Java. Your very famous open source messaging system Kafka, it is all built on top of Java. So Java is going to be there everywhere. At least with my experience, with the enterprise applications, if you look into the various components, right, that could be 10, 20 components. That could be web servers, app servers, there could be a lot of messaging systems, that could be a lot of backend queue management systems. So if you look into it, Java will be there at least 50% of places, right? Your front end could be an Angular JavaScript, Angular JS, but your backend, it could be a Spring Boot Java application, right? So whatever I have seen so far, at least, and whatever the market research says, as you see in the screen, right, Java is there at least in the top 2 or 3, and the popularity. Again, the one more biggest advantage, right? as an architect or I as a developer, if I'm going to develop if I'm going to design a product, right? The first thing what I'm going to look into is how it is going to help me, how this programming language is going to help me for a product design. Second is the availability of the skilled resource for my project. Second is my community support, right? If you look into the community support for Java, it is uncomparable, right? Today, if once you get into this basics of creating programs, then if you go and search in the Google for any algorithm, right, you will get it. I would say out of 8 out of 10 times, I mean, no developer is going to create the code on their own, right? That is not also required. You don't need to create something from the scratch. If you go and look for algorithm, you will get 10 algorithms, and you pick one which is best fit for you. That is where the skilled developer comes into picture, because in Google you will get 10, 20 suggestions, but you should know what is best for you, and you should go and pick it up, right? So the community support. Um, and the way the skilled resources are available for the Java in the market, and the Java itself with respect to its performance and security and portability, right? Very important thing is the portability. So with all these things, Java is very, very relevant, and whatever we are going to learn throughout the sessions with respect to Java is also going to be relevant. As I say, once you are comfortable with this kind of a Java and performance engineering, you should be able to use the similar concept to go and use it similar way for even other need. Say if something comes up in maybe a .NET, or probably I would say even for a Python, right? If you want to go and do a engineering for a Python application also, the things are going to be relevant. Everything is going to take CPU, everything is going to take memory, everything is going to operate in a multi-threaded way, and there are going to be tools. So when one important thing is, you never go and master any tools, right? The mastering the tool will happen over the time. When you're going to use it, you will get mastered. Tools are going to get changed. Today it is going to be Dynatrace, tomorrow it is going to be AppDynamics, today it is going to be a load runner, tomorrow it is JMeter, right? But the concepts are going to stay same. That is why we need to be very good at the basics. So whatever we are going to learn, it is going to be relevant. And why Java is very, very powerful? Of course, it is an open source and free. And there is also a commercial version available with Oracle, where they also sell it, right? When you wanted to go and download Java for your personal use, you can go and use it. Even a big company, if they wanted to develop a product on top of Java, they can use the open source version. But Oracle also provides you a commercial version of Java, where they claim the performance and security are very superior when compared with the open source community. Okay, but again, for us, it is going to be pretty much same. The JVM, the JRE, most of the functionalities are going to be pretty much same. Whatever engineering activity we are going to do it, either you are going to use open source Java, or if it is going to be a commercial version of Java, nothing change. Even for a developer also, there's nothing change. But the way the JVM is going to work in terms of efficiency, Oracle claims they have tuned in such a way that it is going to have a very superior security aspects, also the performance aspects. Yeah, so that is a context I want to set, because I wanted every one of you to understand that whatever we are going to learn is very relevant, and we are going to use it for your next 2 years, 3 years, or at least I would say next 5 years. It is going to be very, very relevant, and wherever we are going to go and coordinately talk about Java performance engineering, you will be respected. Okay, now let's get into this, right? If you wanted to first time when you want to download the Java from Oracle site, right? All you need to do is go to Oracle. I have this link to download all the tools, your Java, or your Eclipse, your Tomcat. All the links are available in the spreadsheet. Today I'll share it with the people. I think whoever already registered, I'll add your email IDs to the Google Sheet so that you can access it. So once you go to the oracle.com, and then if you're going to download the latest Java version, right? What you're going to get is, once you download and install the Java, you will get something like this in your program files, right? In program files, you're going to have Java, and you're going to have JDK, and inside JDK, you're going to have a lot of libraries, right? So what is JDK? What is JRE? What is JVM? So when you're going to download from your Oracle site, right? You will download the JDK, which is going to have a complete set of tools and execution libraries for a developer. For any developer, if you wanted to create programs, if you wanted to compile these programs, if you wanted to debug the programs, right? You will have every tool in the your JDK folder for him to use it. For example, we'll be using something called JVisual VM. We'll be using the JConsoles. Right? All these things are part of your debugging tools. Right? All these things are required for a developer or for a performance engineer. Right? So JDK is a combination of all softwares, all libraries that is required for your execution plus your development plus debugging, right? Say for example, in most of the servers, right, in the service, in the application service, in the production service, nobody is going to develop something. They're just going to execute it, right? So in those servers, you don't need to install the complete JDK. You will have only the your JRE, which is the Java runtime environment, right? The Java runtime environment will be a subset of JDK where it will have only libraries that is required for you to do the execution. For example, if I go to JDK, right? If you go to JDK and if you go to bin, in the bin, you will see a lot of the executables. One main executable is your java.exe, right? And then similarly, if you go inside server, you'll have something called jvm.dll. This is the DLL for your JVM itself. So only this, whatever inside the bin, is what it is required for you to do the Java execution, right? So this alone is required for you to have it in your server environment. But if you are a developer, you should have all the modules within JDK so that you will be able to open the Eclipse, you will be able to go and compile it, you will be able to debug it, you will be able to use the your JConsoles or JVisual VM or your all these debugging tools, you will be able to use it. So once you download your Java and install it, you will get a folder like this and just look for these items. You go to bin and you will be able to see all the important executables. You will see Java C, you will see this is a compiler, and you will also see Java, which is your executable java.exe files. And if you go inside the server, you will also see something called jvm.dll. Okay, so nothing you need to do it. In once you download it, once you install, it's all click. It will auto install the Java, and it will be available within this program files, Java JDK. Right. So once this is done, this is part of your setting up your Windows machine, right? Once you download, just go and check whether all these things are available here, and then just go and check in your command prompt, right? Just open the command prompt, just check for Java version. Okay, it should say what is your Java version here. So it should say Java version is 14.0.1, and this is a Java hotspot virtual machine, right? Normally the path, so there is something called, okay, let me go to the next slide and I'll explain you what problems you're going to get it. For any of your Java application, right? Even if you take JMeter, probably most of you would have used JMeter, right? When you're going to invoke JMeter for the first time, if Java, you install Java, but if there is something called environmental variables, right? If the environmental variables are not set properly, that's a very common problem we face in every machine first time when you install Java, right? You use your own developer machine or your laptop or your load generator machines or the machines where you're going to install some tools. Every tools will look for the Java. If the tool is dependent upon Java, like JMeter, I am saying, right? JMeter depends upon Java. So for JMeter to execute your script in JMeter, you need Java. So you need to do a couple of things for your machine to recognize your Java path, right? So you need to go to environmental variables, and you need to go to this environmental variables. I need to both in the user variables and then in the system variables, right? If it is going to be your you're the only person who is going to use your Windows machine, then probably you can set up it in the user variables. But if it is going to be a server where multiple people can also go and use it, right? You set your Java in both the place. So all you need to do is you need to create couple of variables, right? Java home, right? If you just you want to go on do the edit, and or if you want to give a first time, just go give new Java, and then you need to give the bin path, right? So if you look into it, slash bin is where your executables will be. So inside bin, you're saying whichever tool is going to run, which is going to be based on Java, you want to say you go and locate your java.exe within bin folder. That is what you're referring here in the this path. So whichever tool is looking for a Java executable, you're saying Java is located in bin folder, right? And there are going to be few tools which look for a Java home. So we are going to set Java home as the JDK folder. So some of the tools might expect the tools or libraries which is part of your JDK itself. So you're going to say Java home JDK 14.0.1, right? And then there's something called path. You need to set the path as well. Inside the path, you go edit. There will be some default path available for a lot of your other programs like your PowerShells or your Windows apps, npm fiddlers, MySQL shell. Similarly, for Java, you need to just go and create a new and then type in your Java exe path, which is your slash bin. Okay, so three things you have to do it: Java home, and then path, right? So make sure in the path and in Java you mention the slash bin so that it will be able to go and locate your java.exe directly. Okay, and common mistakes what we do is probably will forget to put bin, or probably will add some additional your say for example, if you're going to just put something like this also, right, it will create some problem. So you can probably do these things and see how Java responds, right? But make sure this is a common mistake we do. We do give incorrect folder path, or probably it might refer to some old if say for example in your project earlier they might have installed Java old version, Java 6 or Java 7. Now you have installed latest version, right? In the path they might have given the older directory. So you make sure that you go and delete that and give the new version whichever you installed. Otherwise, if even if it is going to have two, even I can go and just give one more Java version, right? To say for example, if you have installed it in the some other folder, like say for example, I'm just giving this, right? Because assuming this is a Java 7, if you're going to give this here, and then if you're going to move it up, right? The first one will be taken for your Java execution, which means it is going to give some compatibility issue if your Java variable is going to point to a older version. So make sure your recent version is on top of your variable list, so that there are going to be no conflicts. These are the common issue which you will observe in your projects. They might have installed older version. You might have installed now newer version, but it might not take effect because it is not properly assigned here in the environmental variables. So both in the user variables and system variables create these Java home and then the path. Okay, and then you can also go back once you have done, just go back and check it in the Java version what it is referring to. So it should show Java is referring to your latest version. If it is pointing to an older version, which means the environmental variables, there is some confusion in that, you need to go and change it. Okay, so this is something you need to do it. If it is first time without your knowledge, this might be already there, right? Because some application, some tools when you're going to install it, these things will be done by the tool itself, some cases. So if it is not there, you just go and do it. Even tomorrow when you're going to do something in a new mission, when it's a new mission, Java will not be there, right? Always you end up having these problems whenever this Java is not working properly. Go and check this and make the relevant changes. Okay, So now we know, we have downloaded the Java, we have installed it, we have given the proper environmental variables. So we have some basic setup for us to go and create a few Java programs. Okay, so before we go and write few Java programs, we wanted to understand few concepts around this, how the program is developed, right? So one thing I wanted to clearly convey is, don't, when you're trying to learn this Java first time, right? Don't try to learn too much, right? It has to be a iterative way. If you're going to go and look for each and every words in your Java program, try to understand what exactly it is, why it is there, right? You will not be able to move forward. The way I also learned is, you learn very few things, which is very important for you to go and write a simple program. Say even doing an addition, doing a subtraction, doing a multiplication, right? Just do that, and then learn something else, implement it. Learn something else, implement it. As you implement, then you go and search in the Google what it is, and you will try to get that better. Otherwise, in the day one, day two, if you go into OOPS concept, you try to learn the exact way Java works, you will never end up learning Java at all. That is from my experience. I have tried multiple ways. I have gone through Java books. I have gone through Java online tutorials. You will look into all the logical operations, your a lot of variables, how variables works, OOPS concept. Then will go into a zone where we'll never going to come back. So do it iteratively. Start with the hands-on. Start with the basic programs. Learn something. Go to theory. Learn, and just do some more programs. Whatever program in the program you're going to use it, then go and look into the Google what it is, right? That's how you're going to do it. That's how it is going to make your job very easy, and you iteratively learn. So you'll always keep interested. One main problem in learning the programming languages, you will lose your interest very easily, right? So do this, and you will never feel bored, right? So the way I'm also, so even for load runner or JMeter, right? If you clearly look into it, in load runner, I don't know how much many of you used load runner, right? There are views in it, there are action views end, there are a lot of functions which we have been using it, right? Your string functions, your LR start transaction, end transaction. uh, Most of us would have really haven't gone into that, asking what it is there in views in it, what it is action, what it is, we know what it is, but how it is really working, they really never bothered, right? What is inside your LR start transaction, LR end transaction. So the similar way, I know maybe over the experience, then you would have learned what it is exactly doing it. But beginning of your load runner, right, you would have just started using those functions directly. Similarly for Java also, start using the default things by yourself. Don't look into what is public static void main, what exactly it means, right? You will know eventually what is public, what is private. When you're going to give private, what happens, why it is not working. If it is not, main is not there, why it is not working, right? You can play around and then learn, but get started with a skeleton, right? There is a skeleton that is going to be there for Java. That is what we are going to use it. When I say skeleton, you're going to have a program, right? You're going to create a .java file. Simple Java program, you're going to create it. Any Java program is going to have only two things. It is going to have few variables which you're going to store data, and you're going to do some operation, addition, subtraction, calculation, assignment, connecting to a database, connecting to some APIs, getting some data, right? Only two things it's going to be there in any program. To keep it very simple, right? You would have variables, you're going to have operations. Operations is called method, right? There is going to be always many methods in a class file in which certain operations are going to happen. So some activity is going to happen, saying you're going to do some subtraction, some multiplication, some addition, and you're going to have some variables where you're going to store it, where you're going to get some input. I'm getting an input for two variables, two integers, say a equal to 7, b equal to 5. And then the method, I'm going to do addition, 7 plus 5 equal to 12. That's a simple skeleton what you will have it, right? So you're going to create a small program which is .java, right? when you compile it, it is going to be called as a class file. So your bigger application is going to have 100 class files, 300 methods, right? But if you look into one unit, one small program, every class file will have these variables, will have the method, right? So if you look into the way the classes and methods are working, right? Let me give an example. Okay, you're going to have an e-commerce application, right? You're going to order something. I'm going to order something. Say you're going to order say a laptop. I'm going to order something mobile, right? What happens when you're going to say uh, checkout, right? Or you want to say add to cart? It is going to come to a Java program. It is going to come to a class file where it is going to receive these two inputs, right? Somebody is ordering laptop, somebody is ordering a quantity of 2 laptops, right? So I need to store these things in my variable. So I'm going to say product equal to laptop and quantity equal to 2, right? So in any class file, you're going to have some variables which is going to store this data, and then I need to calculate the price, right? For that, I'm going to have a method where I'll get this quantity 2. I'm going to get the product as laptop, and for a laptop, that might be a cost, right? That is going to be there in my method. So in my method, I'll be calculating the price. So the operation is going to happen within my method, and then the variables are going to store what is the product. Product is laptop or product is mobile. Quantity is 2 or quantity is 3, and then I'm going to do this calculation of price equal to quantity into cost. I'm going to return to my your web application saying you have now added a product laptop for quantity 2. The cost is $3,000 or 10,000 rupees, right? That is the output it is going to give. So when you look into the small unit, small example, there is going to be a class file which is going to store some value in a variable. It is going to do some operation. It is going to return that, right? That is a class. That is the variables. That is the method. That's simple. Let's not complicate anything else, because you can have in application that could be 100 class files, 100 methods, but all it's going to do this: save some data, do some operation, return some value. That's a whole cycle that's going to do, right? So then what is object? Okay, so in my program, I'm going to have only one class file for calculating the price, right? You ordering laptop, I'm ordering mobile, right? Then how to store it and how to do the execution, right? So that is why the concept of object comes into picture, where Java or your JVM, right? It won't access the class directly. For you, it will create a instance of the class, right, which is called an object. When you're going to do an add to cart, it will know it needs to call up a program called product class. It will create an instance for you alone. For a person called Ram, it will create an instance that is called an object. Within this object, you will be able to change the state. When there is something called two things: state and behavior, right? State is nothing but, for you product is laptop, for you quantity is 2. For me, the state of these variable is product equal to mobile, quantity equal to 4, right? So similarly, 10 people who are going to order a product in your Amazon.com, for each of them there will be 10 instances of the class file will be created, which is called an object. So that for you always it's going to be those values. For me, it is going to be mobile. For some other people, it could be a washing machine or a Samsung TV. So only one class file, same functionality will be reused as an instance of the class called an object. So that's how it works. For you, object will be created. Once it is done, it will be destroyed. For me, an object will be created and then it will be destroyed. Class will be there permanently. It will be there in your JVM. Every time that class is going to get invoked, the object will be created. It will be used only for your particular activity. Once it is done, it is going to get destroyed, right? So every class is going to have multiple objects created, 100 objects, 1,000 objects created. It is going to get destroyed. Objects are going to be short-lived, and that is where every object is going to hold memory, right? Because if if you can have 10 variables in your class, right? I talked about product, I talked about quantity, but that could be 10 variables, 20 variables, a lot of operations, right? Everything is going to take memory, and that is where we are going to see later how these objects are developed properly, how the variables are declared properly, and in terms of memory conception, how this is going to get impact our overall application. There might be problem with the way objects are getting created. There will be leaks, which will be dealing it later. But when we are going to deal about that, we should know what is that object, right? You will have a class file. Whenever a class file is going to get called by your front end, Java JVM is going to create multiple objects. It is going to create destroy. What it is going to do, it is going to change the state of your variables that is there in the class. It is going to do some operation, right? So that is the simple skeleton which you wanted to understand. Don't go beyond this, right? That's it. You think as of today, Java is nothing but it's you want to have one or two, three class files. Each class file is going to have multiple variables. Is going to have multiple methods, and you're going to access it, create objects. That's it, right? From here, once you are comfortable with this, you can scale up whatever way you want, and whatever additional programs you wanted to create, all these things you can do it one by one, which will also look into it, right? Okay, so data types, we talked about the product and quantity, right? So Java has two types of data types to store this data. Obviously, we have to store values like 1, 2, 3, 4, or we need to have something called true or false. We need to store bigger data for which we are going to use strings, arrays, classes. So don't worry about definition of each and everything, right? We are not going to exactly worry about what an array is going to do with, what a string is going to do with, what a boolean is going to do with. Right? You eventually will learn why exactly we are going to use all these things. There are two data types: primitive and non-primitive. Even that, we really don't need to worry about what is primitive, non-primitive. But from performance aspect, it is very, very relevant. Right? I'll say why it is relevant. When we go into concept of a memory heap and memory stack, this primitive and non-primitive is going to be important. So just understand that there are two data types, and this is going to have a relationship with the way Java is going to handle the memory, the way it is going to assign the memory to heap or stack. That we'll learn that in the JVM concept, JVM memory. The reason I'm saying this primitive and non-primitive is because it is connected with our Java memory. Okay, so if you look into any program, right, small letters, whichever variables that is declared as small letters, those are all primitive, like int, byte, char, boolean, or primitive. Whichever is going to have caps as a first value, like strings, arrays, or all, it is going to be non-primitive in nature. Okay, just don't worry about it. Don't go beyond that. For our understanding, we are going to use these data types for whatever calculation we want to do it. I may have to set the quantity variable as integer. It is going to have quantity as 2 or 3 or 4. I will declare a string as a product name. Product could be a laptop. Laptop is a string, mobile is a string. So I'll declare a variable called product, which is a string. I will declare a variable called quantity, which is an integer, right? That is how we are going to use this data type. Just understand there are going to be two primitive and non-primitive, and they are related to our Java memory concept, which we will learn in the JVM concepts. Okay. Okay. Now let's start creating some Java project. Okay. So for Java, creating Java project, there are a lot of your development environment is there, right? Very, very famous one is the Eclipse. Okay. You can go and download don't download the latest version. Latest version are always going to be like a little bit of unstable. Just go and download the latest -1, right? Again, in the Excel sheet, which I'm going to share it, will also have the link to this Eclipse, right? What we're going to do is we're just going to create one or two programs today, and I'll also let you to create similar programs over the weekend for you to get comfortable with the Java environment, Java environmental variables, Eclipse, compiling these programs. Okay, so let's go into my Eclipse. So once you download the Eclipse, you just need to, again, for Eclipse, all you need to do is set the environmental variables properly, and nothing else you need to do it. Eclipse will automatically will recognize, or while you install the Eclipse, right, only one question it will ask: give me the JDK path. Okay, you just need to provide the JDK path there. Nothing else you need to do it. It is going to be just click next. You will be done. Okay. So once you open the Eclipse, or while installing the Eclipse, it will ask for the JDK, and after that you will not have any questions. So it's going to be very easy to get installed and used. Okay. Once first time when you're going to open the Eclipse, and first thing what you will do is you'll go and create a new Java project, right? So just give a project name. You can just give whatever you want. You want to say learn Java programs. Just give whatever project name you want. Just give next. You need to just give finish it, right? Just no need to create any module name. That's it, right? So once you create this, now you have a Java project. Okay. By default in the Java project, you will have something called source. You will also have GRD system library. Okay, that is all part of your JDK. Whatever libraries that are there in JDK, that will be referred for your project automatically. Please just give me one check. Sorry. Okay. So once you create a package, or create a new project, right, it will automatically point you to all your java.exe files, right? Whatever you provided as a while installing Eclipse, whatever JDK path you're going to give it, you're going to get it automatically in your Eclipse project, right? So you don't need to do anything else for adding your JDK path again once you started creating your new projects. Inside that, you're going to have something called source, where you're going to have all your Java programs, right? The next thing what you're going to do is go and create a new class. Okay, just going to give a new class name, right? This is again, go with the skeleton. Just going to create a one new class file. The new class file name could be you can say my first program. And for always for your first program, check in this method, right? So every project is going to have a main method. That is, the main method is what your JVM will look for. When you're going to run an application, it will always need one main method. Okay, so always just don't worry about what is public, static, void, main. That's a template. Probably it is very easy for you to understand what each and everything is. If you, public is always, you need to have your class files as a public, so that it can be accessed by outside. Outside means a JVM will be able to access your class file. You have to declare it as a public. If it is going to be a private, then it won't be accessible, right? You can probably try again giving remove public, just give private, remove static, and see what happens. Remove void, what happens. For a main method, for your first program, main method, main class, you should have this as a declaration. Just do finish. It'll be like this. Okay, and then you can start writing your programs. So when I say program, probably I'll go to the sample programs what I have created. Yeah. This one, if you see, look into it, right? I have just created a first program.java, which is going to have set of your variables, right? So I'm saying int value equal to 10, int value 2 equal to 12. I'm just doing some additions, and I'm just going to do some print. I'm just even go and comment this out. Okay, so just make sure once you install your Eclipse and then created a project and created a class file, right? Just make sure it works, it compiles, it executes, right? For that, just create a very simple things like this, so that you know your Java is set properly, your compilation is working properly, your Eclipse is working properly. You don't have a problem with your main methods. Okay, just go and run it. You're just going to right click and then run as and do the Java application. Okay, just you proceed. So it is going to execute it, and it is going to provide the data in your console. Okay, so sometimes this console might not appear. So the bottom one, right, where you're going to print these things. So that time, what you need to do is you need to go to the something called Windows, and then go to the your appearance, sorry, the show view, and then go to the console. Okay, sometimes it'll get toggled, and it won't be there. So make sure that you can go and open this console, so that it is always going to be there. So if it's not going to be there, just go to Windows, go to the show view, and then go to the console. Okay, so that you will be able to see the logs, whatever is getting printed. Okay, so this is your first class file. So you have this main method, and you have declared this integers. You just printing it out, and everything comes out properly. Okay, now we know that everything works fine. Your Java is working fine, my Eclipse is working fine, my compilation is working fine. And if you go and closely look into it, right, when you go to expand this first program, this is .java, that is your Java program, and for every Java program it will have a class file C. So .java is compiled into .class file, and inside this class file I have something called this main void, right? That is how each and every program is going to have. Say if you want to go into the this one, it will have a class file, it will have a method. If you look into this first program is having a main method. Okay, but the second program is not having any main method, it is having just a method one. So only your first method you should declare it as a void main. Other things which you are going to call from this first program, that can be a that should not be a main method, right? I'll just give an example of that as well. Say for example, now you created a first class file, right? And now if you want to go and create a second class file, you can just go and then create another class file. Say my second class file 2. Don't check this box. Okay, just take it out and finish it. You will get this. Okay, so you will have only the class file and not a your main method inside that. Okay, so inside the second program you can again do a similar thing, whatever you wanted to do it, right? You wanted to probably assign some variables, do some operations, right? Do some calculations. Okay, now if a lot of places in real applications you're going to have a lot of lot of classes, you're going to have a lot of methods, right? So we'll just take a one simple example of how to call a method which I have declared in the second program for my first program. That is how it is going to happen in your real projects, right? You will have say 10, there'll be 10 class files, and I will create my class file, you will create my class file. In some point of time you might have to access my methods. Say for example login, right? Login is a common class file. You will also use it, I will also use it for authentication. Okay, so inside that login you will have a method for authentication, for checking your user ID, checking my password. Say from my program I will call my login program, login class file, and then use it. Similarly, there will be some other people who might use the same class file, call this method of the login class file, and they will use it. So how to call how to communicate between two class files, right? So the way it is going to happen is you are going to create a object of this class file. As I said earlier, right? Everybody can use the class file, but they have to access it through an object only. Because for me, I going to change the state and behavior. For him also, they are going to change the state and behavior. For one of the person, the authentication will be abc@gmail.com. For second person, the variable could be say ashish at gmail.com, right? So everybody going to call the login class file, and then assign a login as user ID is something, and then password is something, right? So you need to create an object for every class file which you are going to call, right? From the first program, I'm going to call the second program, my second program here. So this is how I do it, right? In my first program, I'm going to create an object of my second program. The syntax is, you give the class file name here called second program, and then you can just give whatever name you're going to create to the object name. You can say my OPR or obj dot one, whatever you want to call, give an object name, you give it. That is up to you. But the class name should be the one which you are created here, right? So create a class name, second class name here, second class name here, and you can give the object name whatever you wanted to call it as. And then once you create this object, then you will be able to access the say for example, I'll just go and give obj1 dot. If I click dot, right, it will give all the method that is declared in the second program. For example, in the second program, I have created a method called method1. Okay, so inside my second program, I created a method called method1, and I have some operation, right? In the method1, I'll look for some two inputs, value1 and value2. Okay, so in the first program, as soon as you go and click something called obj1 dot, you will be able to access this method1. Okay, and then it will ask for two values, right? Because in the second program, whenever this method is going to call, you need to pass this value, some value you need to pass it. So I'm just passing it as value1 and value2. Okay, because this value1 and value2 I declared as 10 and 12 here, integer. So this 10 and 12 will go into this method. Okay, so that is how you need to call a method of your second class file. So I have one program, first program.java, I have second program.java, I have two class file. In the second class file, I have a method which is going to looking for two input values. With these two values, it is going to do some operation, and it is going to return the value to my first program. Okay, so I've created an object, and I'm using the object, I'm accessing the method1. Okay, and then it is going to call this method1, and it is going to pass this value, and it is going to do some operation, right? So that is how the entire Java application is going to work. Assume that entire Java application is going to work on this kind of a methodology. For us to start with this Java concept, right? I don't think beyond this. From here, you can create multiple classes, you can create multiple methods, and this is how you're going to access this method from a second program. For every class you're going to access, you need to create this object, and then access the method and do something. Okay, so try this when you're going to open your Eclipse and do this for the first time, right? Start with this, and from here, say you've done this basic setup, right? I have declared few variables, I'm doing some operation, I've created my second class file, I'm accessing the second class file from my first program, everything's working fine, right? Then you can create something on your own. Say I need to probably go and compare two values. I need to go and probably access my database. I need to go and call some HTTP calls. How to make an HTTP call from a Java program? How to make a DB connection from a Java program? How to do a string comparison? How to do a string concatenation? If you just think about a lot of activity which might be required in program, right? And just go and Google it, you'll get algorithm. That is how I think you need to develop your programming skills, because nobody is going to give you an requirement here, right? For you to learn Java programs, you have to create these small programs, and you yourself have to create few requirements, say how to do this. For example, I have probably I'll not show how to do this HTTP connection, how to do this DB connection, right? Probably you can yourself try it. If you just go and for that, probably you need to install MySQL database as well. I'll probably give you the link for MySQL, right? How to make a connection to MySQL, right? If you go and Google it, you will get a set of lines. You just need to copy it. You don't need to worry about how exactly it happens. You always have set of 2-3 lines to make this work, right? make it work, and then go and look into it. What is this .get connection? What is this driver manager? And if you want to make an HTTP call, right, I need to go and do certain things. I have to go and create a object for this HTTP URL connection, right? To say, for example, I need to connect google.com from my Java program. How to do it, right? There are going to be set of syntax, set of imports you have to do it, right? Again, I'll probably introduce you to the imports as well. So imports is nothing but, as I said, we are not going to create anything from scratch. Everything is there in open source world. To make an HTTP connection, you're not going to write thousands of lines. For making a DB connection, you're not going to write thousands of lines. All you're going to do is import the jar, get the jar file from your open source community. Just go and Google jar files for HTTP connection, jar files for DB connection. You will get those jar file, right? Once you get this jar file, you need to just go and add those jar file in your program, right? Again, how to add this external jar files into your program? You Google, you will get the answer. Okay, so configure, you need to just go and what I did for my MySQL connector, right? For a DB connection, to work, I should have this jar file, MySQL connector Java. We will go and download this jar file from the internet and add this to the build path. Go to Java build path, go to library, and add this external jar file. Just whatever you downloaded from your internet, right? Just need to add this to your point that to that particular folder, and you can export the jar file to this particular folder, right? So that's how it is going to work. You download the jar file which is required for your program to work. How to identify a jar file? Simple that. I mean, my requirement is to make a connection to google.com. How to make a connection to google.com, how to make an HTTP call. If you go and just Google it, it will say go and download this jar file. You just go and download this jar file and then come to your project. My project is learn Java program. Right click, build path, configure build path, libraries, add external jar. That's it, over, right? And then you will be able to import it. Once you have downloaded it, right, you should be able to go to your program, and then you should be able to go and import it, right? So this java.net, a lot of these things will be available within the system library itself, right? And you don't need to go and there are a few things like DB connections, you need to download jar files, but few things are your system libraries. So if you go and search in the internet how to make an HTTP connection, it will say go and put this imports. Imports is nothing but you're just going to import the other packages from your system library. So we have seen this system libraries, right? JRE system library. Within that, you're going to have a lot of inbuilt jar files or inbuilt packages which you can use it for your programs, like java.net, java utilities, java.util, right? But you don't need to learn what you need to do import. You just go and need to go and search in the Google how to create an array, right? Say, for example, if I need to go and create an array, okay? Say, for example, I have created something called my list array here. I declared an array here, right? And then if you go in the top, I have added something called import. I'll just comment it out, okay? I will if I want to create an array, right? I'll give this get the syntax from my Google anyway. I'll just go and say list double. I'll just create an array list called my list. But it's saying it is showing some error, right? It is saying array list cannot be resolved. List cannot be resolved to a type. Okay, it is not accepting it. And then if you go and just mouse over to this, right, you will get all the recommendation. It will say go and import array list. So Eclipse by itself, it will give suggestion saying you need to go and import it. Just do an import. Okay, now it is there. Import, it will be there. It will be coming. Then again, it is saying still saying a problem, right? Then it will say import something called list. I'll just go and do a list. Now it has added this list. So which means now my error has gone. Okay, so you should know what is import, but you don't need to worry about how to add imports, what import you need to add it. All this recommendation will be given by the Eclipse itself. All you need to do is get your requirement, Once you get the requirement, you go and get the algorithm from the internet, put it here. If there's any problem, it will say what is the problem, and then you can go and do this import. So there are a lot of imports that will be available. Import Java utils is there. As I said, import java.net.htdb URL connection. So whatever you require for your algorithm to work, it will give you suggestion what has to be imported. Okay, and few things for a DB connection, right? As I said earlier, you need to import this java.sql. That is where something it is not available by default in your JDK. You need to go and download it from the internet. One example is your database connection. So for database connection to work, you should have this java.sql connection, all these things. From where it is going to come? It is going to come from this jar file, which you're going to download from the internet. So only there are two things. One, external jar files, which you want to download. One, you will already have this thing as part of your system library. Okay, this one you need to download it. Okay, so I mean, don't worry about, again, keep it very simple. For your program to work, you're going to write these small programs. Don't worry about this DB connection. Don't worry about this import. First, get started with this. Just write a one main program, compile it. Write a second program, create a method, call it, and make sure it works. And then we can go one by one. I'll provide you this DB connection snippet. I'll also give you the jar file which you wanted to download it from the internet, and how to add this build path. All these things you can do one by one. But from a concept perspective, the import are going to be important, because you're not going to create program on your own. You're going to reuse that is available in your existing system library, or you're going to download some jar files from the internet and you're going to use it, right? So import is something you need to know, so that you will once you do this import, a lot of your compilation issues will go. Okay, so we have seen class file, we have seen object, we have seen method, we have seen import. Package is nothing but you can bundle a couple of your class file into one single package, right? While you creating a war file or jar file, that is something that will be required. You will be importing all the Java files into one single package. If you see this, right, my default under my default package, you will have all these things. So it is nothing but a grouping it. All these Java files are part of my default package. If you want to create a new package and then create a class file, that is also something you can do it. So package is nothing but it is going to be combination of all your class files. Okay, so this is skeleton. You need to understand from a skeleton perspective. You need to understand how to create a class, how to create an object instance, how to create a method, how to use it, how to use the import, right? So once you know this basics, and you do hands-on, right? Again, make sure you do this hands-on. You will get a lot of compilation issue. Just go and try solving it. It will be a lot of fun. It will be initially it will be difficult for you to first time when you're going to do it, right? It's going to be a little difficult, but once you were done for it might take a 1 day or 2 day. Once you're done with this, right, you'll get a lot of confidence, and then learn something else, iterate it. Learn something else, use it. Don't go beyond this and then try to learn OOPS concept, lot of other aspect of Java programming, all the variables type, your assignment statements, comparison statements, string handling. Whenever you need it, you use it and learn it, right? Then you will, once you're comfortable with it, it's up to you how far you wanted to go with Java, right? But from a performance engineering aspect, I think if you're done with this, if you have an hands-on, if you know exactly how method works, what is object, you've seen that real time, then whatever we are going to read through in the next 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is, right? It is going to be very, very easy for you to map it to those things. When I going to talk about heap, you will know what heap refer to. When I'm going to talk about stack, you know what is stack. When I'm going to say a method is having a problem, you know how the method will be created. When I'm going to say there is a problem with the third method of a third class file, right? That's how the hierarchy you will get it. If you go and look into some tools, it will say the 5 seconds is time taken in class method 1, and from there it went to method 2 where it took 8 seconds. From there it went to method 3, it took 6 seconds, right? This hierarchy and all, now you know how method is called from another class file. So you'll be able to relate all these things when you go into do the root cause analysis in any of the JProfiler kind of a tool. That is the whole intention. For that, this basics is very important. Go and do a hands-on. get your laptop ready with this Java, with this Eclipse, with this basic programs, and with the basics import to verify how to make an HTTP connection, how to make a DB connection. Okay, all these things, please do it on your own so that you will be comfortable. Okay. So time is 8:10. I'll not go into the JVM architecture today. That's a very, very important topic, base for your memory and threads. So I'll not even rush it up. We'll go take it slowly. Okay. So for the Saturday and Sunday, right? Whoever is going to enroll, I think already, I think 6 or 7 people are enrolled. For them, by evening today, you will get access to. I'll probably send you a message to your number. I have your numbers. I'll send a message to you. You just give me your email ID so that I'll give access to my Google Sheet, and then my folder in my Google Drive as well, where you can get this code snippets. You'll get a link to download the e-library Java project, and then also to get the your Eclipse and other softwares and tools. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you a WhatsApp message. Please send your email IDs. Okay. So we'll probably pass it here. We'll take probably 5-10 more minutes. If you have any questions, we can take it up, and then we can continue from Monday.
Satish, when is the next class? You said Monday or a Sunday? I thought somebody said it's Sunday through Saturday, the Thursday.
No, it is always going to be Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday will not have class. It's okay. When I say it's all IST time, right? It is IST. Right. So Monday morning will be your Sunday evening.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
So it is IST hours, Monday to Friday.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. I will also try to probably whoever are already registered, right? Probably I'll send you a message, and probably whenever we both are available, probably we'll do a quick catch up of 5 minutes. Okay, just to try to understand what you're doing currently and what is it expected in your new role. So that I'll whenever I'm going to explain all these things over the period, right? I'll also know exactly what you're looking for as well. We're not going to change the course content anyway, but at least I know what is that you're doing currently and what you're expecting. I can align it accordingly the way I'm going to explain it. Okay, so yeah, please make yourself available for 5-10 minutes either today, Saturday, or Sunday, so that it will be easy for both of us.
Sounds good.
Yeah, the reason behind is earlier, I think probably 3 months back, 6 months back, the way we used to do is we used to start with the directly with the response time analysis using the profiler or heap analysis, right? But what we found is it is always, though people understand all these things, they've never been comfortable with exactly what is happening, right? That is why when we changed it a little. We wanted to make sure not a lot of people would have been done a lot of programs, right? Idea is to not make them expert in Java, but make a head start, make a beginning, so that gets a few basic fundamentals which is relevant for performance engineering, so that nothing will be black box. Everything will be very, very easy for them to relate with respect to whatever we are going to do it in the engineering aspect. So even if it is going to be 1 or 2 additional classes, because that is how it is going to make the sessions effective for both of us. So that is why this is introduced, and so that initially once we do this on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people will get enough time to go back and install these things, have these things ready, have their hands-on. So one main problem is with the performance testing to engineering is we never get hands-on, and as long as we get hands-on, we never feel that confident, right? That is the barrier we wanted to break it. We might get the opportunity immediately or not, but once we do it in our own laptop with creating programs, creating issues, and then looking into the tools, exactly seeing those problems, right? So it is kind of though it is not a in that scale of problem which you might see it in your actual real world, but it is more of a similar thing which we are going to create, and then see the code, get comfortable with that, create war file, deploy it, run it, identify problem, and then go back to the code, change something, again create a war file, right? So this is something if you do it in a hands-on and then learn the engineering concepts along with that, I think that will give a lot of confidence when we go back to the project or even attend the interviews. So that is the whole intention.
This will get the source access to all the source code.
Yes. Yeah, I'll give you the code snippets. Either I will upload it to a GitHub and I'll give it. There are two things, right? One, the e-library web project, right? With the entire source code, I'll give you the link from where you can download it with the source code, and you can also the WAR file I'll give it. And whatever these small programs, what I have it, right? Even the one which I'm going to create memory problems or thread problems, response time problem, those code as well, I'll give it to you so that you can do the hands-on.
Thank you.
Satish, I have a couple of questions. One is coming to the tuning, right? Query tuning, recommendations and all that. Will we be covering that, like how to tune the fine tune the query for better performance, and also when it comes to capacity planning and sizing, right? Will you be discussing at least some concepts around that, sizing and capacity planning?
Capacity planning, yes, definitely. Capacity planning, we will definitely discuss it in each of the topics when we are going to cover it, right? How each and everything is going to have a say on your capacity planning in terms of your horizontal scaling or vertical scaling. We'll definitely cover the capacity planning along with the sessions, along with the various JVM tunings or GC tunings. We will talk about how this is going to make a decision on your capacity. That definitely we will touch it upon. Though it is not there in the course list, right? It will be there, part of the discussion, definitely. When it comes to the SQL tuning, no. Tuning the SQLs is not part of this course. As I said, again, from application performance engineer, we'll talk about, definitely we'll deal about database and what are the problems and how to identify problems, but SQL tuning is not part of this.
How about
so,
Apache?
So I understand that, but will you be touching on now at least?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just asking him, and I understand him will not be looking into or talking about tuning, how to tune the SQL queries, but then will we be at least talking about to the extent to know where the issue, or at least in the issue points to the SQL queries which needs to be tuned. Something like that.
Yeah, that is absolutely, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we using any tools for that, like Dynatrace, AppDynamics, or anything, or how are we diagnosing the bottlenecks, the performance bottlenecks? Are we using any tools?
Dynatrace AppDynamics will not be used for the sessions, but we'll use other diagnostic tools when it comes to GC, or when it comes to your response time analysis or heap dumps, thread dumps. We will be using all the native tools that is available within the JDK. Plus, we'll be using JProfiler. We'll be using Eclipse memory analyzer tool. And yeah, all these things will not be using Dynatrace or AppDynamics. Again, the idea is tools. If you see Dynatrace and AppDynamics, right, it is going to give you observation directly. But under service, we know the concept, how exactly each and everything works, will not be able to correlate. So idea is how to make use of the available tools within your JDK or native tools. Along with that, we'll use JProfiler for your response time analysis. We'll be using JVisual VM. We'll be using the Eclipse memory analysis tool. We'll be using few available thread dump analysis in the open source world, and for client-side performance, we'll be using the developer tools. What else? Yeah, probably if you want to get the list of all the tools, I can get you what that we are going to use it. But definitely not Dynatrace or AppDynamics.
Okay, how about are we touching upon any containers like Docker or anything, at least some concepts around that, how a container works and how,
Okay, okay, I got a question. So each and everything are things are going to be vast, right? You have a lot of things. You have Kubernetes, you have this Docker concept, you have PCF, Azure. If you ask me, there are going to be hundreds of things which we may have to learn. But this course content, the way it is designed, you look into it, right? It is all going to be your core part. From here, if you look into containers, right, Docker container, it is going to be similar to your virtual machines. But idea of container is to how can we run multiple things parallelly, right? How to make your deployments very easy. How can you package it as a Docker image? So those are all different concepts that is going to be there today. Tomorrow there will be different thing. All of a sudden you will see Amazon coming up with new concepts. So including all these things in a single course, it's not that easy. But from a basics perspective, that's why I included DevOps, I included cloud, I included mobile, so that we should at least know what it is now in the current scenario. But to answer the question about Docker or container, it is not part of the course.
Okay, so yeah, so that's good. About including this cloud, right? What are we covering in those DevOps and cloud performance testing? What are the things that we're covering there?
Okay, so in the DevOps, we'll be covering the Jenkins, how to integrate Jenkins with the JMeter. And then what are the plugins available, and then what is the concept of continuous testing and continuous monitoring, what is expected from a performance tester or a performance engineer when it comes to bringing performance into a DevOps, what are the challenges that we face, what are the real-time requirements when it comes to performance into DevOps. One, from a hands-on perspective, we'll look into the Jenkins and JMeter integration, what are the plugins we are going to use it. More from a real-time challenges, real-time requirement, we'll talk about how continuous testing works, where it works, where it not works, what is continuous monitoring. That will be part of the DevOps. When it comes to mobile, we will touch upon how to analyze your Android native apps, what are tools available for iOS. From hands-on, we will do the hands-on practical session for your Android performance analysis. But for iOS, obviously we would need a Mac and iPhone, so we'll just theoretically cover what are the tools that are available for iOS. So that is for the mobile. For the cloud, we'll cover the couple of components here. When it comes to cloud, the auto scaling aspect, which is very relevant for performance, the cloud resiliency, how to test the cloud resiliency, and what are the tools available within the each of the AWS or Azure, like your Azure Monitor or CloudWatch, what it is and how can you use it. So these are the aspects that will be covered as part of the introduction to DevOps, cloud and mobile.
Okay, that's good. Are we covering anything, like at least an idea about like performance budgeting, like in terms of the response times, right? Like the breakdown of the response times across different tiers, and how we get all those details. Like, see, LoadRunner gives us the end-to-end response.
I got it. See, normally, I got a question. So normally, see, that is not part of the individual courses, but that will eventually happen as part of the discussions, right? Yes, definitely. but how do we get this split up? How to correlate your load on a response time with actual response time? These things will be part of our discussion for sure. That is how it happens in every course, right? These real-time questions will not be part of your courses, but definitely it will be discussed and answered all of your real-time challenges, or the way we do our testing and engineering. So those will be addressed. If you ask these questions, definitely we will discuss, and then only we'll move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, see, the course itself, it's a very exhaustive course, right? We have tailored it in such a way that it is going to address the most of the people. There might be specific requirements, like maybe somebody wanted to really get into the Dynatrace, or really get into only about AppDynamics, about the cloud, about the Docker and container, right? But when we looked into various people who comes into the courses, they need some basics. They need very important basics. They need the complete picture about engineering, how it happens. Right, that is the starting point, and from there somebody might use Docker, somebody might use Kubernetes, somebody might use Azure. That might be something coming up in the future, right? This will be a basic thing, which a minimum thing they would read, from where they can pick it up from there. So that is the whole idea of this course, and this course is still, it's a very exhaustive course, right? Each and everything is going to be intensive. So clubbing other things into it, it is going to dilute the important aspect. Then we might have to reduce your discussion on GC, or probably discussion about the monitoring tools. That we don't want to do it. So the idea is not to touch everything, but do go exhaustively on every aspect, which is very primary and minimal thing that is required for a performance engineer to know.
Okay, thank you.
So what we'll do is probably as I said, people who have already registered, I'll drop a message to you. Just give me an email ID, and I'll share you this link. And I'll also probably try to definitely I will speak to you whenever we both get time, today or next 2 days. And other people who have not registered, if you still have any questions, you can just drop me a message. We can just get into a quick couple of minutes call, and if you need any clarification. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And people who have registered, please do this setup, have this setup ready, and it will be very useful for you. More than a session, doing it along with this, having your hands on, I'm guarantee you, I have felt that advantage, right? Felt that confidence when you do something hands on, and when you go and talk to other people in a relevant language. It will be really good. So please do this setup, have this tool installed, have your basic Eclipse configured, run some programs, and have it ready for from Monday.
Sure, sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.